Dallas from Minnesota has 2 questions. If you could change the members of the NWO and limit it to 10, who would they be and how would you end the NWO in WCW? Your first mistake was having 10 members of the NWO. The NWO did not need 10 members. Of course, in the end, the NWO had about 30 members. But the NWO did not need 10 members. You have the original trio, Hogan, Hall, Nash. They recruit a younger guy. Obviously, Waltman was going to be part of the group, but maybe it's Waltman, maybe it's somebody else who could have been an even bigger star, right? But it's like a younger guy from the WCW roster. And then maybe the Giant, right? He could still join. He could be the muscle of the group. Him and Nash could be the muscle of the group. But that's it. That's really all the NWO needed. You probably would have the Bischoff affiliation, but he's not a wrestler. That's it. You really did not need more than that. Now, as far as how I would have ended the NWO, Starrcade 97 with Sting beating Hogan clean. That would have been the beginning of the end. I shouldn't say the end. That would have been the beginning of the end of the New World Order. I don't know what the hell they did. Whatever they did that night was exactly the opposite of what they should have done. Yes, Sting did win in the end, but I don't think they could have botched it more badly if they tried. And think about how long they built that up for. That should have been a gimme. That should have been a slam dunk that night. You go in there, Sting beats Hogan clean. No false finish where Hogan basically pinned him clean. Bret Hart does not have to run in and punch the referee who did nothing wrong, which just made Bret look like a dick. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And depending on who you believe and what happened and why it happened, there's a lot of stories about that match. But it's very simple. Hogan submits to the Scorpion Deathlock right in the middle of the ring. And on Nitro, the next night, Hogan pays respect to Sting as being the better man. And that's when Hall and Nash and the rest of the NWO come out. Can't believe what they're hearing. And they kick Hogan out of the group. They kick him out of the NWO for being soft. I mean, they really lay a beating on him. They bloody him up. Eventually, Sting makes the save. Hogan, though, is hurt. He disappears from TV for about a month or so. At the next pay-per-view, Sting could defend his title, against one of the other members, maybe the Giant. And he wins. NWO gangs up on Sting after. The numbers are too great. And that's when Hogan returns to rescue Sting. Trying to return the favor, get revenge on the NWO. Hulk Hogan is back. He's been gone for 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Here comes Hogan. And that then leads to a tag team match on pay-per-view with Hogan and Sting as tag team partners against Hall and Nash. You get another pay-per-view main event out of it. Let's say it's Super Brawl. I think people would have been willing to pay to see Hogan and Sting as a team trying to take out the remaining members of the NWO with the stipulation that if they win, if Hogan and Sting win, the NWO would have to completely disband. And that's when they pull a Horseman on Sting. Hogan turns on him during the match. It was all a setup. It was all a ruse. And he helps Hall and Nash win. They set a trap. Sting walked right into it, which Sting was known to do. He did it at least once before with Ric Flair and the Horsemen in the past. So history repeats itself yet again. I know it's a little bit of dumb babyface syndrome with Sting, but they set the trap. Sting walks right into it. Now, you get a second Hogan versus Sting match that you can promote on pay-per-view for the world title. Let's say Spring Stampede. Right? Was it Spring Stampede or Uncensored? I think it might have been Uncensored. Whatever the March pay-per-view was. I feel like it was Uncensored. But Hogan wins the belt back. And yes, it is a short reign for Sting, but Goldberg by this point is getting hot. Right? He's undefeated. Every week that goes by, he's racking up wins. The fans are getting louder and louder and louder, and they're into his matches. you could see at that point, by March, April, you could see that Goldberg is on a hot streak, and we got to really just make sure that we, nurture this guy, don't fuck this up, keep this momentum going. It's already obvious. I mean, the writing is on the wall where things are going with Goldberg. You start setting him up early to be the one to take that title off of Hogan. Sting is always going to be in the mix. Sting is always going to be there. You promoted Sting. I mean, that was the big thing for a year and a half until Sting finally got the win. And he had a few months with the championship, but Hogan gets the belt back. Hogan has to get the belt back to get it off him onto Goldberg a few months later. And I would have stuck with that. But I think you hitch your wagon to Goldberg at that point and you run with it. And after Goldberg wins the title that summer, and I probably would not have done that on TV, I would have, you know what I mean? I don't know why they couldn't have just set up the pay-per-view that month from the Georgia Dome instead of doing it on Nitro. That should have been a pay-per-view. With Goldberg winning the title from Hogan in the main event. After Goldberg wins the title, the NWO can try, they can fail to get the belt back. That's where the fracture begins. And the cracks start to show, and they sort of start eating each other from within. Until the split finally happens, and they all just go off on their separate ways. So by that point, you will have gotten 2 full years, a little over 2 full years, of the NWO. Which was more than enough. And that's the way I would have handled it. Now, Dallas's other question says, during Ric Flair's 1991 to 93 run in the WWF, let's say he got to form his own Four Horsemen group, who from the WWF roster at the time do you think could have worked in a hypothetical WWF incarnation of the Four Horsemen? Well, it's very simple. Mr. Perfect. If Perfect is still hurt, if Perfect has the back injury, Mr. Perfect is the manager, Razor Ramon, and Shawn Michaels. And I know Razor's gimmick it didn't really fit, but I look at that roster back then, there really aren't that many great options. I mean, I guess Rick Martel could have worked, maybe, but I think Razor. I mean, Razor, he's one of those guys, you kind of underestimate how physically big and imposing he really was. And, in WWE, he got over with the audience. I would put him on that list of guys who could have and maybe should have at some point, were it not for his issues, been a world champion. Kind of surprised that he never got even just one short run with the world title. But he could have been groomed to be that kind of guy. I think he could have worked in the Horsemen. Shawn Michaels is a gimme. I mean, Shawn Michaels had just gone solo in early 92. Brash, cocky, arrogant. I could see Shawn with Sherry at his side. Sherry could be the dame of the group. Shawn showing up wearing the suits, almost like being taken under Ric Flair's wing. So that's kind of what I would see the Horsemen of being. Perfect is the manager. You got Razor, you got Shawn, maybe with Sherry at his side, Flair obviously, and there you go. I mean, there's your WWE version of the Horsemen. Ideally, though, if Perfect didn't have the back injury, then he would be in there as a wrestler with Flair and Michaels. And Bobby Heenan would be in the J.J. Dillon role. Michael from Liverpool, England. One potential dream match that we have yet to see but fans barely seem to bring up is Triple H against AJ Styles. With AJ now being back on Raw, it could certainly open up the door for a feud between the two heading into next year's WrestleMania. Of course, it would depend on Triple H wanting to invest time in training for an in-ring return. What are your thoughts on a potential match? I'm not sure what AJ being on Raw has to do with there suddenly being a better shot at doing a Triple H match. I mean, is Triple H part of the Raw roster? And I'm not aware. I don't quite get that part, but I have no interest in seeing it. I really don't. I really don't have any interest in seeing it. Triple H's last few matches have been plotting. They have been boring. They have not been good. AJ is probably the best person for him to work with at this point. But I really don't have an interest in seeing any more Triple H matches at WrestleMania. I guess the Batista match wasn't horrible. but I didn't think it was great. It was great that Dave got the closure he wanted. I know he's wanted that match for a long time. Honestly, the last great Triple H match I could think of that I really enjoyed and was entertained by was the mixed tag. It was Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey against Triple H and Stephanie. They had the best match at WrestleMania 34. I'm not going to lie. That was the best match on that show. Go back even earlier than that. I mean, it's probably Triple H and Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30. I mean, I can count on one hand the number of what I think are great Triple H matches that I really enjoyed in the last 5 or 6 years and still have fingers left over. So I just don't have any interest in seeing it.